as got it. For the people who don't know me, I'm Carlos Chavarria. My last name is a Basque name. I've never been in the Basque country. I hear because the reputation of the Basque people, if I go to ask for the heritage, probably have to pay some bills. So then I never been there. I'm Costa Rican. I'm studying forestry. My first degree, and then I had the opportunity to jump into conservation through tourism as a wonderful accident when I was hired by Tirimbina Rainforest Center. This is where I met Tim. Tim was the chief of the volunteers at Tirimbina. He's the only one, so he was the chief because of that. But so Tirimbina gave me the opportunity to work in an organization that is connected with Wisconsin in many different ways, but also jump into that wonderful world that it's educating the people of through tourism about conservation and the experience that we are developing here in this country. Later, I get another degree in tourism and sustainable tourism, and I started in 2013 with my own organization, promoting the whole country and other regions around the world. It has been, hopefully next year we're planning a trip with the Urban Ecology Center to Galapagos that we hope will happen. But I also has been taking people to Panama, Pantanal, Brazil, and other wonderful regions of the Americas. So this is me, and thank you for the opportunity to talk with you and share this information. So what about Costa Rica? Costa Rica is a country in Central America. It is only 51,000 square kilometers. And I always love when you're from Wisconsin because I can make the best comparison about size. What big is Costa Rica? So, well, if we take the whole Costa Rica territory and we place it inside Lake Michigan, it's going to fit. And still we will have some water to move around that new island that is conformed by the territory of Costa Rica. That gives you an idea about the size of this country, that it's really small. We are only 5 million people living in these 51,000 square kilometers, and with a huge marine territory on the Pacific, because Costa Rica owns an island that is Cocos Island, pretty close to the Galapagos. And on the Caribbean, it is a much smaller ocean territory that we own. Actually, our Pacific coast, it is 2,200 kilometers, and our Caribbean coast is 220 kilometers. So let's see what happened here. Okay, so in this country, it is a tropical country. We are only 10 degrees from the equator. There is a wonderful and immense diversity. And we always said that when we compare ourselves with other countries around the world, we are not the country that has more species of for example, in plants. We are number 12 with over 10,000 species. We talk about amphibians. We are like number 14. Reptiles, 228, mammals, number 30, birds, number 23. Well, actually, there is a bigger number. Now we are about 930 species of birds. But still, those numbers are actually looks more like our soccer national team that never do very well. So will be not a reason to come to Costa Rica, because you see there are more diverse countries around the world. But when we are able to switch the tortilla and offer a different sizes, we compare that diversity of those countries with the size of Costa Rica. So then you can see that in the different categories, the number of species per area. And sorry, this is my dog barking. And then, for example, we compare with Mexico. Mexico is 40 times bigger. Colombia, it is 22 times bigger. Brazil, 166 times bigger. So then this is an immense and huge number of species that are focused that are concentrated here in this country. This is that make Costa Rica very attractive, because you don't need to travel that much to see a lot of species in a short time. So this is basically a a map that shows the life zones. Life zones is a system that we use in Latin America, mostly to classify the ecosystem based on precipitation, temperature, and elevation. And every color, it means a life zone, but inside those life zones, there is a lot of microecosystems that holds a lot of different species. And in terms of what we know about this country in terms of biodiversity, we are just scratching the surface of what we know. From the bigger groups, well, we know a lot of them, probably about mammals. We are certain about like 98% of the mammals that we have. Maybe will be a couple bats or some shrews that we don't know well. We talk about trees. We are about 90% of the trees of this country that we know. We talk about plants, then the numbers start lowering, maybe about 70% of the plants we know. There are many that we have still not identified. When we talk about insects, maybe we know about 20% of them, maybe, being optimistic. So when I mention those numbers, it is because if we don't know the species, we don't know nothing about the relation between the species. And this is one good reason why we are doing an effort in a selfish way to protect the ecosystem of this country, to understand better the relation between the species and see how we can provide a better protection. The story of Costa Rica not always has been happy. We do a strong process of deforestation in the 50s and the early 60s, and we destroy almost 40% of the forest cover at that time, basically trying to produce more food. After the World War II, one of the new initiatives on the world, it is that you have to produce your food in order to control your own destiny, right? Do not depend on anybody else. So then we're trying to do the same like everybody was doing, trying to grow more food, and offering the people free land, all the land they can get. And the only condition it is that you use the land to grow something. When you get a piece of forest, what will be the only way to show that you're interested in that land? Chopping the forest. And so in that way, we generate we produce a huge deforestation that in the 70s was in some way an alert, a call of alert that we are losing a lot of ecosystem, and we owe that to that wake call to two gentlemen that already passed away, Mario Bosa and Álvaro Ugalde, who are the founders of the Costa Rican Protected Area System that promote the forestry law, and with them, the first national park in 1969. So really, we compare with the US, our conservation history is pretty recent compared with you guys, where you have more than 150 years and experience of national parks. So, of course, our backyards will be like a long and robust Pacific coast that, as I mentioned, to have 220 kilometers, combined with coffee plantations and the Caribbean coast that has 220 kilometers, as I mentioned before. So there is a lot of different landscape and variety that we found in this country. So in only 0.03% of the world's territory, we have 6% of the life on Earth that we know, probably more, because there are many species that we have no clue about it. And that sounds like a really great catch for inviting the people to come to the country, but it's also a huge responsibility, because everything that we do in this country, it is going to generate an impact. And because of that, it is always a reason how to proceed with caution when we are trying to develop something. Some of the reasons of this incredible diversity, I mentioned already that it's our geography. On the center of the country, we have a mountain chain that goes over 12,000 feet. The two coasts pretty close to each other. This was the most recent land in emerge that connect to before islands, South America and North America, creating a bridge that attracts a lot of people to move over here. So Costa Rica is the northeast area for many species, as well as the southwest area for many species. And we have another natural events like the bird migration that also bring us an additional species during the times of the migration, where we have your birds having fun here. Meanwhile, you are getting a little cold over there. So we're talking about over 110 species of migratory birds. That has been 124, excuse me, 124 migratory birds from the north, and like 6 species that came from the south. So those conditions are making that Costa Rica, it is a pretty diverse ecosystem, a very diverse country, excuse me. So when this is the map of the national parks and biological corridors, the dark green, it is our national parks, the protected area that are public. The yellow lands are indigenous territories that are not protected areas. It is somebody else's territory, but because the way how indigenous people in Costa Rica has been dealing with natural resources that are very well protected, there is a lot of conservation effort happening in those lands. And the green land, the light green, excuse me, it is something that we call biological corridors, that in the time when we start creating our national park system, that remember we started in 1969, we didn't have that much planning. We didn't know what we want to protect. We didn't know what are the most important areas to protect. So it was more individual efforts from scientists that has been working in certain areas, or inaccessibility. So some areas that help us to protect those areas. For example, the biggest patch of forest that we have, that is right here on the border with Panama, actually in the national park here, that is called La Amistad. It is an international park, goes into Panama too. It is because this is the highest lands in Costa Rica. This is Salamanca Range, that actually also has one of the biggest rates of endemism in the world. And the reason of we're able to protect that in the early 70s, it is because it was very inaccessible. Still today, there is not much accessibility to that area. So, but the rest of the areas, it was effort from individuals that are pushing to protect those areas, but it wasn't not that much planning. So you take a look, you will see like most of the parks are located on the central area of the country, that is the mountainous area, the area that at that time, nobody was thinking to grow coffee or cattle or anything else. So that helps us to protect those areas. But for example, the rainforest, that is all the north area and the Caribbean coast, all this area that I'm marking with the arrow, it's a little protected areas, only Tortuguero National Park on the Caribbean coast, and a little patch of Braulio Carrillo National Park near Sarapiquí for the people that has been visited Costa Rica. That is the only protected areas. The rest, it is in private hands. And in general, when we start with the concept of protected areas, we use the same concept that you are using in the US. And it's basically that the people can do conservation. This is why we have to check the land from the people, declare as a national park, kick them out, and charge them if they want to come in. And if they do something wrong, we fine them. This was the model of conservation in all around the world, because in general, not everybody has the chip of conservation. It's just a few people, and most of the people will looking for destroying natural resources. This is how it was envisioned, the concept of the national parks everywhere around the world. When we realized in 2000 that we don't have that much space to continue creating national park, first because we have another needs, and we need to invest in many other aspects of the society. And because at that time, the protected areas in Costa Rica are representing 26% of the territory, more than a quarter of the country is already protected. And because the way how we create national parks in Costa Rica is that we expropriate the land first and pay later, and that later became in some cases 20 years for some people. Then the Supreme Court decide, because the people accuse the government, that we cannot create any more national parks if we don't pay first. So since that moment, we only were able to create one more national parks in 2000. That was more a rearrangement of lands than really paying the land. So then at that moment, we start thinking that, hey, you know, there is something that is called people that maybe will be interesting if they can become part of the conservation process. So then we reorganized the whole protected area system in Costa Rica. We don't have any more forestry service. We don't have any more national park service. We have, or the wildlife service, we have everything connected because natural resources are not isolated units are areas that has a huge interaction with the people, and then we are looking how we can make those interactions positive in favor of the conservation. So that concept of biological corridor that is on the green area, it is something that was established to promote conservation in those territories that belongs to somebody. There is private land, but land that can be managed in a more sustainable way, with the right incentive, with the right education, in order to favor conservation into the national parks. At the end, that we want to do with the biological corridors, it is to create that connectivity that helps the species to have a better gene pool and do not have any issues with wildlife that will be isolated and eventually turns into extinction, at least for the species in different areas. So this is a wonderful concept that involves a lot of education, and this is that we are investing a lot of more time in the past 25 years, not only for the people who live in the national parks, for everybody in Costa Rica, working strongly in what is conservation of the protected areas and so the concept of sustainability that applies to different elements of the country. And I think there is a work in progress, but we're able to do a wonderful job. So from these areas, I just want to show you, sorry that is in Spanish. We have today 160 protected areas, and that I want to show you are those numbers that are 21% of the continental surface of Costa Rica. And we have now more, because just a month ago, we increased the marine national park at Cocos Island, making a huge corridor with Malpelo Island in Colombia and the Galapagos in Ecuador. So that number increased now to almost 26% of the marine area of Costa Rica that is protected. And because also we start thinking that we need to protect our marine resources because we are surface organisms. Sometimes we forgot what it's the ocean, and Costa Rica has been doing, I think, a good job trying to protect more and more the marine resources that we have. As I mentioned, we have a huge territory on the Pacific, because the presence of this, the ownership of this island, Cocos Island, that it's 600 miles from the coast of Costa Rica, nautic miles from the coast of Costa Rica. So in those protected areas and out of the protected areas, we have a lot of different protected species. So this is a neotropical river otter, black color hawk. This is from the north of Costa Rica. Montezuma pendola, that probably many people that have been traveling to Costa Rica remember well. This is the bigger oriole that we have in the Americas, and I think orioles, in the Americas. Orioles are also other places. Garter trogon. And some of the aspects that also contribute with that process of conservation in Costa Rica, it is that many people in the world consider one of the oldest democracies in the Americas. We have no army since 1948. Doesn't mean that people in Costa Rica is against the idea of having an army in the country, of course, but not, we don't have anything against army in other places. Sometimes we have that discussion with people that travel from the US. Of course, our political situation is very different than the situation of other countries. But in my opinion, and this is just Carlos' opinion, in Central America, no country needs to have an army. We are so small and tiny that there is no reason to spend money in that way. So since 1948, we were able to devote those monies that actually before 1948, to be fair, it wasn't that much either. We don't have like a great army or something at professional level or so. But in our constitution, we established that 8% of the net gross income is going to be invested on education. So we have an access to education at all levels, including from, of course, elementary, high school, but also university. So universities are free here in Costa Rica. I have two boys that are already big guys, 23 and 21. And for the older one, that is actually he's paying his university right now, but I pay tuition $250 every 6 months. So because those changes that has been made in the past, that provide accessibility to everybody to education. It is something that the people is discussing also as a model of sustainability. Sustainability is a word that we can define in many different ways, but it's basically the opportunity to manage the natural resources, respecting also the cultural resources, and providing a good opportunity to improve the life quality of the inhabitants of the country. And that is not because we are like thinking that we are different or so. It is because we don't have mine, we don't have gold, we don't have silver, we don't have oil, we don't have coal, we don't have natural gas. So then we have to start thinking how we are able to solve the needs of energy from different ways. And I'm going to talk a little more about it. But this is something that has been going through all the lines and became like a module for all the business in Costa Rica, that sustainability is something that we need to have. It's not something like it's fun to have or nice to have, or the people said, hey, so nice what you're doing. No, we need to put this into our DNA. And this is that has been happening in the past years in terms of how we're able to support the economy with sustainable activities. And that includes tourism, transportation, energy, industry, all the aspects of the society. A great diversity of landscapes and a great gastronomy. So those are elements that make Costa Rica also an interesting place to visit. So as I mentioned, sustainability is something that goes through all the elements of the society. For example, this is for 2016. Actually, since 2016, we are doing an even better job. But the energy that is produced in Costa Rica, about 75% comes from hydroelectrical projects. 13% it is geothermal, but it's not like fracking the soil like I hear some projects in the US. This is basically using the energy of the volcanoes, and we are on the ring of fire of the Pacific, so we have plenty of volcanoes to use their steam and instead of let them loose on the air, put it in a pipe and then move the turbines and generate electricity. Actually, this is the cheaper way how we can generate electricity. About 10% are windmills, much smaller than the ones that you have in the US here, because it's a lot of wind. Actually, today is a sunny, beautiful day, but kind of windy. Biomass, and this is basically a small percentage that is generated by sugarcane factories that they, instead of just let them throw the remains of the sugarcane after they obtain the sugar juice to make the sugar, they have kind of biodigesters where they process that and then they generate electricity, solar energy that is not that much, and thermic that will be burning diesel, because remember, we don't have coal, we don't have natural gas, so it is basically burning diesel, and that has been kind of low in the past years. We have been doing a good job trying to minimize this, because it's the most expensive energy, and actually it's under 1% in the past 3 years. So this is something that in some way makes us proud about the way how we're able to maintain those sustainable ways to generate electricity. We stop focusing in hydroelectric because it's probably the one that generates more impacts. So we don't have any new huge project of a huge dam that is going to flood everything. We are concentrated in take advantage of the small or medium-sized rivers that can generate, respecting an ecological flow. So it has been a whole change of the model how the thing has been done in the past in order to generate electricity, and putting a lot of emphasis in geothermal, because still there is a lot that we can do with the volcano energy. So some of all the species, this is Rufus Motmot ground cuckoo that has been a great deal in the past 3 years in Costa Rica. We're able to see it a lot. This is pictures from 2 years ago, because it's like a ghost in the forest, but 2 weeks ago it was another place where people had the opportunity to see it, and has been a great opportunity to see that bird. Caracara, that is one of the common encounters in the trips in different regions of the country. Actually, a bird that became pretty common in the cities, start like socializing with people more, and there are more chances to see it in the cities. I live in Heredia, that is a town, one of the town that has a lot of houses. This morning I was walking and I saw a couple of them soaring over the city. So there are more and more connected easy to see that species in the cities. This can be considered now as a backyard species for us here in Heredia. This is northern emerald toucan, one of the endemic species from that area of endemism that we have in the highlands of Costa Rica, and we share with the western part of Panama. That is also same part of the Talamanca Range. American pygmy kingfisher, the smaller of the kingfishers. There are 6 species of them, and in Costa Rica, including the one that we have as a visitor from you, the belted kingfisher. The other 5 are residents of Costa Rica. Crimson colored tanager, one of the most striking tanagers in terms of colors. Not my favorite, because this is the colors of the rival soccer team that I don't like, but the bird, it is pretty nice. So it's one of the wonderful tanagers that, as probably you know, one of the most colorful birds that we have in the tropics. Hummingbirds, 52 of them. This is long-bill hermit. Some of the antbirds, ocellated antbird, that was on the same place of the Rufus vented cuckoo a couple of years ago. There's another species that you have to follow. If you encounter army ants in the forest, you will be very lucky, because you will find those guys that are taking advantage of the army ants, scaring everybody out of the forest, and then those birds just get the insects that are trying to escape from the ants and fell happily on their beak. Scarlet macaw, one of the 2 macaw species. We have also great green macaw in Costa Rica. The scarlet macaw became very abundant. Has been some projects for conservation in the past years to reintroduce the macaws, and their healthy population, I will say more than healthy. Now they are going to places where they didn't used to be. They are not displacing another species. Actually, there are an interesting recent research about the space that they share with the great green macaw, with no problem, not necessarily a competition for food. They have, even that they look for the same diet, the beak of the great green macaw, it is more specialized in certain nuts that those guys can reach. The red Hairy Barbette, so one of the wonderful species of the highlands in Costa Rica. Motmots, we have also 6 species of motmots. This is the bigger guy, Rufus Motmot, wonderful species. With the fact that you look at the tail, that they have that exposed area there, there is something that they do on themselves. They modify those feathers, taking section of the feather just to look pretty. Do males and females do it? So we don't know what dispersing happened, why they do that. There is still one of the questions that we have about that behavior, why they decided to take out some of the feathers from the tail just to have a different appearance. There are many theories, but we don't have any one conclusive yet. Rosetta Spoonbill, as I mentioned, having the coast also offered the opportunity for a lot of species to be found on those environments, in mangroves and the coast. This is one of the most colorful birds that we have on those areas. And of course, one of the most wanted species when the people come to Costa Rica, resplendent quetzal, that actually is not that difficult to see. We always joke that our national bird, it is clay-colored robin, or clay-colored thrush, and that it's not brown. It's a nice bird, but it's not that bird. It's not the quetzal. So everybody says, hey, why Costa Rica have that bird as your national bird? And I said, well, because it was chosen by politicians, not by ornithologists. That in some way is something good, because we can blame somebody about not choosing well. Oh, but the real reason about the clay-colored thrush being our national bird, it is everybody knows them. It's in the whole country, and it has a wonderful call, and then a wonderful song, excuse me, and they start singing when the rain starts, at the start of rainy season. So for the farmers, Costa Rica used to be a farmer's country. I don't say that anymore. Rain, it is a wonderful gift for the crops. So if there is the bird that announced the rain, that has to be our national bird. So this clay-colored thrush, no resplendent quetzal. fiery-throated hummingbird, another of the endemic species from that region of Talamanca. Beautiful, beautiful, tiny little guy. Fiery bill aracari, that is another of the endemic species from this is on the South Pacific of Costa Rica, and a little portion of Panama. In my opinion, the most beautiful toucan that we have in Costa Rica, because that combination of colors on the beak and the red mark of the eye, and the all coloration on the chest and on the back of the feathers. Chlorofonia, golden brown chlorofonia. I have a better picture, I need to change that. But it's still a wonderful, wonderful bird from the highlands too. One of the endemic species also from the highlands, Costa Rica. The Fruit Loops, the Kill-bill toucan, a wonderful, wonderful inhabitant from the lowlands in Costa Rica, and a species that also has been spreading more the territory and can be found even close here to the town. Actually, I reported a couple of years ago that I was participating in one of the counts of the Urban Ecology Center, and this guy was, I saw it in a coffee plantation pretty close from home. So this is another backyard species that sometimes we can find close to here. Coppery-headed emerald, one of the other endemics of hummingbirds that we have in Costa Rica. Emeralds are tiny little guys, and this is a beauty that also inhabit the highlands of Costa Rica. Colored trogon, we have a good number of trogons, 8 species in Costa Rica. Also one of the most striking birds, are related with quetzals, and as well as the bigger quetzal. Those males and females has normally wonderful, wonderful colors. This is great curassow, a juvenile male. That is the biggest species of bird that we have on the ground. Sloppy flyers, but wonderful, wonderful bird, and a species that actually we can see a lot more in our forest, thanks for the reforestation and the stop of the hunting that used to be in the past, where the people hunt this for meat. Not a bird, but also kind of a symbol of the biodiversity of Costa Rica. Sloth, this is a two-toe sloth. We have three-toed and we have two-toed sloth, and normally it's one of the mammals that the people wants to see more. Not that difficult to spot them. Some of the wonderful landscape that also we offer that are the volcanoes. Having an access to an active and not active volcanoes is also part of the elements that make Costa Rica so rich. And of course, this is a great environment for some endemic species. We have on those high peaks that we call the Paramo, that is the highest tropical ecosystem in Costa Rica, that actually has some endemic species like volcano junco, like volcano hummingbird, just to mention two of many other species that only you can find in the highlands in Costa Rica. And we are talking about, in this case, is Irazu volcano. Irazu is our third highest peak that goes over almost 14,000 feet. Arenal Lake, this is in La Fortuna area, one of the wonderful regions of Costa Rica. I have a small business in La Fortuna area, so this is, if I stay there, I can tell this is my backyard, the area where I can do a lot of birding near the property that we run in La Fortuna. This is Arenal Volcano, one of the only, really the only conic perfect shaped volcano that we have in Costa Rica that is still active, but the activity is mostly since 2005. Has been since that time only 3 other eruptions, but has been kind of quiet. But it's a pretty young volcano with only 6,000 years. So a lot of monitoring on the life of this young kid. Of course, the coasts are offering always the chance to enjoy the wonderful sunsets and a great shorebirds and marine wildlife in those areas. Okay. I have this, and I hope that nobody's joining, and I have somebody has questions or comments. More